Bob Parks, our next speaker, is a conservative columnist. His website, Black and Right, these three words are separated by hyphens, www.blackandright.com is his website. He is a former vice president of the Mass Republican Assembly, having served between 2006 and 2007. He is a co-founder and executive director of the New Media Alliance, MMATV.com, a former candidate in the 2nd Franklin District. Please welcome Bob Parks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to be inspirational. One of my pet peeves as a columnist is revisionist history. It's something that the Democrats have mastered. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples. We hear about Susan B. Anthony, and she's this great liberal icon because she led feminism and all this. But we don't always hear about the fact that she was once arrested because she tried to vote Republican. We also hear about other liberal icons like Margaret Sanger, who was it turns out she was what they call a eugenist. And she believed in the 30s that one way to cure society's ills was to rid society of what she called the unfit. And they came up with this great idea of aborting them. We don't want to have too many poor people. We don't want to have people sucking on the system. So let's just get rid of them. And she later founded this little-known foundation called Planned Parenthood. But we don't hear the bad things. We always hear about the good things when it comes to liberals. And just recently I was very heartened to see there was this C-SPAN poll that just came out over the weekend. And they listed the top presidents of all time. Number 1 was George Washington. That's quite appropriate. And number 2 was Abraham Lincoln. Just over the weekend, there was another controversy that brewed. There was an Air Force base that was having a President's Day breakfast. And they had a picture of George Washington, and they had a picture of Abraham Lincoln, and they had a picture of Barack Obama. And there was a group of people there who was very adamant that Barack Obama's picture should not be there. And I can sort of agree with that, because you have George Washington, who personally led a revolution and founded our country and became our first president. You had Abraham Lincoln, who freed slaves, very unpopular at the time in some circles, and that probably cost him his life. I don't see Barack Obama being in that same class. I think he is there because he's the 2nd black president. And now here in Massachusetts, just to localize it just really briefly, Deval Patrick is the first black governor. Somehow, I don't see him having his picture placed with all the other great governors of Massachusetts, because to be frank, he sucks. But the Democrats do have a proud tradition of tearing things down and tearing people down to make themselves look good. Remember the Clinton scandal. Remember they said that Thomas Jefferson was also a flawed person like Bill Clinton because he had an affair. So they tear people down. And so now we're having the same tactic being used about Abraham Lincoln because he is an icon to Barack Obama. So we have to tear him down and humanize him because he's a Republican. No way that Barack Obama should embrace Abraham Lincoln because of his principles. So we need to tear him down. There have been recent reports and stories over the last 6 months that Abraham Lincoln was gay. Now, they dropped that after a few months because in order to use that argument, you would actually have Democrats and liberals using the word gay as a pejorative. So we can't have that. So they've now gone another direction, that Abraham Lincoln was a man of his time. So what does that mean? In those days, slavery was the thing. People made money off of it. People survived. In fact, at one point, there was one presidential Democratic platform that said to get rid of slavery would diminish the happiness of the people. A man of his time, Abraham Lincoln was the first elected Republican president, and the Republican Party was a party that was birthed with the principle of abolishing slavery. That's, I mean, one of their first presidential platforms or first party platforms had 9 planks, 7 of them addressed slavery. So to say that he was a man of his time, they need to tear that down. And why do they need to tear that down? Because if you go to the Democrats.org website to this day and go to their history section, they claim that they have always been the party of civil rights. Now, the way they teach it in school, the way they write the history books, you would think that's perfectly valid. And if you read the history section of the Democrats.org website, you will read a very illustrious history that just sort of between paragraphs leaves out about 150 years. The Democrats, as most of us know in this room, gave us things like the Ku Klux Klan, which was one of the first terrorist arms in the world that went after black people who were trying to vote, because at the time all black people were Republican, and all the whites that supported them. There was massive violence at Republican meetings, and this is something we never hear. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were written by a Republican Congress and Senate and overwhelmingly passed, and in some cases, in the cases of the 13th and 14th Amendment, not one Democrat voted for it. Those are the amendments that give us all our rights. The Democrats gave us slave legislation like the Missouri Compromise, the Dred Scott decision. These were all Democrat policies that they leave out when they now say that they have been the party that's always been for civil rights in this country. Saying that Abraham Lincoln was a man of his time, they're trying to assume that because the R behind his name was that he was a racist. And he was hardly anything but espousing Republican principles. You know, I want to piggyback on something. I'm going to go off message for a sec, because conservatism, unwavering conservatism, as Al, and Al and I used to toss this around all the time, and we were preaching to each other's choir. But, and there's nothing wrong with moderation, but you have to understand in a political battle, especially here in Massachusetts, how many times have the Democrats reached across the aisle in an effort of bipartisanship to us? Do they compromise in their principles? We need to be a party that is apart from them. You can have Democrats and you can have Republican light. Very few Republican lights get elected because you can get the real thing with a Democrat. That's why conservatism, while it may seem intolerant to some, is the way we can win back Massachusetts. If we try to get along with Democrats, we can do that after they're in the minority. But until that time comes, we need to have our rock principles and differentiate ourselves. I had a debate with, I ran for state representative this last time out, and unfortunately I got caught up in the McCain tidal wave where most Republicans stayed home. But I had an opportunity to debate the incumbent. He made all kinds of promises that he has not kept, sort of like Barack Obama. And when you put these people on the spot to defend their principles, they can't. We need to keep doing this. We need to keep pushing our principles in their face. Don't apologize for being conservative. I don't. And I take more heat than anybody in this room, obviously. And I will continue to do so. I will continue to be here for the Massachusetts Republican Party, for the Mass Republican Assembly, because that is the way. That is the way we will turn our country around and turn our state around. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Barry. Thanks to the Malden City Republican Committee for the opportunity to speak to you. And God bless the Commonwealth. Thank you.